Hi, this is Paul Gilbert. I'm a Technical Manager in the Faculty of Health and Life Sciences, and you're listening to the Academy's Developing Practice podcast.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of the University of Liverpool's Academy's Developing Practice podcast. In this episode, myself, Matthew Davies, an organisational developer, and Alex Owen, senior academic developer, sat down with Paul Gilbert. At the time, Paul was a technical manager in the university's Institution of Integrative Biology and is now acting head of operations. We talked about all things technicians and what the signing of the technician commitment means for the university and its technicians. We hope you enjoy.
Hi Paul, it's great that you're here speaking with us today. Obviously we've been working closely together on the technician commitment over the last couple of years. But before we get into that, and we ask this of every guest, I'd just like to hear from you where you give us a little bit about your professional background and how you got to the role that you're in today.
Okay, yeah. I joined the University of Liverpool back in the summer of 2017. Prior to that, I was at the University of Manchester for 12 years. I started off there as a research technician and then progressed to become a lab manager. Prior to that, I used to work for a couple of years in London testing urine, which was great.
Wow.
So I've come a long way.
Brilliant.
So I came into university in the summer of 2017 into the technical manager role in the Institute of Integrative Biology, and that's where I am still now.
Right, okay. So what made you make the switch from Manchester to Liverpool?
Going to get into football here, aren't we?
Yes.
No. It was just a case of looking for career opportunities where I go next. So I'd been there for 12 years.
Yeah.
I'd got as far as I could have got with that role, and it was just a case of looking for new opportunities and moving up, really.
Okay, great.
So can you tell us a bit about your role here? What does a day-to-day job look like?
So my role here, I manage or lead the technical team in the institute of quite a broad team supporting a lot of excellent research and all of the operational functions of the institute, or not all of, most of the operational functions of the institute. So day to day is quite varied. Actually, there isn't really a day to day. There's a lot of, I joke about meetings, but of course there are a lot of meetings. That's because I'm involved in a lot of things. So a lot of committees and a lot of a lot of the operations of the institute and a bit further beyond. So it's very varied, very broad, much more than my previous role, and I think it's allowed me the opportunity to get involved in a lot more different things and have a bit more input into much broader and more varied activities across the institute and the university.
And why is it so important to get that kind of technician's voice into that level of operations?
I think simply because technicians support pretty much everything that we do to some extent or another, and it would be that from people working in stores, safety coordinators, what you might consider the more classical technician in a lab, actually pretty much support almost every function, and critically so. Without them, a lot of stuff doesn't happen, and they have a lot of input, a huge range of experiences, expertise, backgrounds, skills, a lot of which go untapped really. And I think having the technician voice in backing up a lot of the functions of any institute is actually really quite important, to get that different input, to get a lot of expertise that we bring into the university. We don't necessarily exploit as much as we could.
Yeah, great. And from some of the reading that I've been doing around this, is the sector recognising a bit more, do you think, the vital part that technicians play in HE? Do you think there is that recognition now, or do you think we've still got a little way to go?
Yes to both, actually. I think there's a lot more recognition coming about the role that technicians play, about how we can best support them. But of course there's also a long way to go. I mean, it's the reason we have the technician commitment, for example. The big initiative that's driving a lot of this is because of the under-recognition of technicians in higher education institutions and research institutes. That initiative is really helping to drive forward an agenda to better recognise and value our technical communities. But as I say, it's also there because it hasn't happened. There is still a lot of work to do, but there's also a bit of an upswell in the sector at the moment around supporting technicians.
Brilliant. So this technician's commitment is something that our university signed up to in 2017. Can you just give us a bit more information about what that is and what impact that has on the work at our university?
Yes, so the Technician Commitment is a higher education institution and research institute initiative led by a steering group of representatives from various sector bodies, including the Science Council. And the commitment really is there to support technicians across 4 key areas of visibility, recognition, career development and sustainability. And the initiative itself is it invites institutions to become signatories, and as part of becoming a signatory is to make a commitment via the use of initially a 24-month action plan to state how as an institution we will put measures in place to support technicians across those 4 key themes. I was very lucky actually to come into the University of Liverpool just as we'd become a signatory. And I actually went to the first signatories event representing Liverpool, which was fantastic. The impact of the Technician Commitment, I think, is in the year and a half it's been running. I think it's about a year and a half, maybe a bit more than that, 2 years, that it's been running. Really has been huge across the sector, seeing huge impact and energy from institutions to really put good measures in place to support technicians. In Liverpool itself, I think our action plan, I think, was really ambitious actually. I think I've been lucky enough to see the action plans for quite a lot of the institutions that have signed up, and ours I think really stands out as being quite ambitious, but not just paying lip service. There's actually some really impactful things in there which will change the support for technicians over decades rather than just for the next 2 years of the action plan. Some of the things we're doing, I think Matt mentioned earlier the Technician Commitment Steering Group here in Liverpool. I think we've all trying to drive in the same direction, trying to improve a lot of the things that we do for technicians.
So obviously in the last 2 years since the commitment was signed on behalf of Liverpool by the Vice-Chancellor, there's been a significant amount of work that I've been involved in, and I think a lot of that work has been around the quick wins that we could achieve in this short time frame before the action plan was produced. Things like raising the visibility. I know we worked together on things like getting the technical showcase up and running the first year, which was part of a larger conference, and then obviously that went on to be a standalone event the following year. So what other actions have you seen in the last 2 years which are probably more specific for Liverpool?
Well, I was lucky coming into Liverpool that we had already just signed up to the commitment, so we were just starting down that journey, and pulling together the steering group, as you and I both sit on. I think it was the first thing I think we did really well was engage the technical leaders from across the university to actually inform the areas that we should be addressing across those 4 key themes, rather than just making stuff up to fill in a form. We actually engaged the technical leaders and asked them to go back to their teams and tell us, actually, as technicians, how can we best support you across those themes. As a result, I think our action plan is really quite ambitious. I think we've got a lot of things in there. As you say, there's some of those are the quick wins around, particularly around visibility, which, over the short term go some distance to show actually that there are some things happening here.
Yeah, there is a community out there as well.
Indeed, there's a community, but also that we're actually taking that voice that we've got from the technicians and applying it instantly, and saying, well, actually, there's instantly some momentum already, and then keeping them informed about the other things, that the longer term, meatier things that are going on in the background. Some of the things I think we are pursuing which will really benefit technicians over the longer term are looking at different career pathways, ensuring access to development for all technicians at all levels, regardless of the status of their contract. I think that's a really important one. Hopefully, over time, this will send a message to current technicians in University of Liverpool and prospective technicians, actually, that we're not just a university or an employer that wants to state that we're a member of this commitment. We're actually putting in initiatives to really make a career as a technician at the University of Liverpool a really good option.
Yeah, I can back that up. That's one of my favourite actions around making sure that access to development for all technicians, regardless of contract status or role, is sort of expected. There's a bit of work to do there around probably changing some mindsets, some
I think
culture.
Culture change is the hardest and longest thing to address.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right. The word of expectation there is that I don't think we should be putting on development for the sake of development and saying to people, well, we've now got a pot of money, so you have to do things. It's about setting a culture and changing a culture such that a lot of technicians historically have taken on a job for a long, long time as a job. I think the times are changing, education is changing, universities and the model by which universities operate is changing, such that a technician role should be seen as a career option.
Yeah.
And by career, that means that you are in charge of actually where you go next, what do you do, how do you improve yourself, how do you develop? And that should be an expectation of the role, not just an added bonus.
And I guess some of that goes along with the kind of showcasing of what technicians do. You were just mentioning, Matt, about this technical showcase.
Yeah.
Has that come as a result of the commitment showcasing some of the work that technicians do?
Yeah, it was tied together with a conference for professional services staff, which many universities do. But I don't know if many of that had a showcase of the technical work and equipment and sort of really exciting bits of research that the technicians were involved in. That then just the following year, that, like I say, that became a standalone event, and we managed to bring in more technicians, and we've got technicians across at Nest Gardens and Lea Hurst, and they came across and showcased an awful lot of mind-blowing things.
Yeah.
To be fair, it was really interesting.
Well, I could actually happily say that quite a lot of places have actually, in the last year or so, hosted technical showcases like we have, absolutely as a direct result of becoming signatories of the technician commitment.
Brilliant.
I think ours initially has rolled into part of the 1PS conference, which was really good, really successful. I have seen a lot of other institutions have done very similar, purely because they've signed up and said, well, actually, we now have a duty to evidence the roles that technicians play and how crucial they are to everything we do, but also how broad they are.
Mm-hmm. Who comes to that? Is it other technicians? Is it prospective? I mean, is it students from schools? Is it who comes along?
Well, the
to
audience. Well, it's funny that because we did have a school visiting at the same time as we ran the last technician.
Right.
So we did have some some pupils around, but the audience should be as wide as the university is, and that's one of the challenges around the next technical showcase to engage the full community of people at the university. We did have a lot of other technicians coming around, and they made some of them made synergies with each other. So some people from human anatomy started to work with the guys at Lea Hurst and the small animal place. So we saw some great things happening as a result. So just moving on slightly then, alongside being an active member of the steering group for the Technician Commitment to Liverpool, you've also worked on a report that investigated the role technicians play in supporting the mental health of students. So I was just wondering, could you explain a little bit about that report and maybe talk about why you think that's really important?
Yeah, so I can't take too much credit for that one.
You can try.
Because I can try. Actually, I've got an opportunity here. It was all me. No, I can't take too much credit for that because the mental health report was actually led really out of a PGR mental health and wellbeing project led by Kate Jones and Maisie Jenner, initially out of the Institute for Integrative Biology. And that was aimed at looking at putting in support initiatives for postgraduate research students around their mental health and wellbeing, because there's some fairly shocking stats around that. As an offshoot of that, there was an opportunity for some collaborative work with the PGR team and some other partners such as the Institute of Physics and Royal Society of Biology, I think, or Chemistry, I can't remember which, around actually the pastoral role that technicians have, particularly very student-facing technicians, and the impact on mental health and well-being, not only because of the role they play in supporting students, but actually on the technicians themselves. So I was involved at some level of that. I wasn't involved in the kicking off that project, but it was really, really interesting and really useful thing, I think, to be involved in to some level. As part of it, we communicated a national survey at technicians to ask them about their experience of supporting mental health for students, and in particular where it was expected as a part of their role, or it just happened to be a part of their role, and if they'd had any support from their institution in doing that. I think it's we had over 700 responses, which was quite telling, and also really showed that there's a really big issue there to address. And the report was really aimed at highlighting that technicians play a really kind of unique and really important role in mental health and wellbeing for students, because quite often they're very student facing, and to somebody such as a student who is experiencing mental health problems, be it because of stress, for example, the technicians often represent a neutral party that they can turn to, that they might not even plan to speak to or divulge anything, but actually it just happens because they're in a difficult position and there's someone there who they see quite a lot, who's often supporting their work, that doesn't represent an authority figure, represents a neutral party to whom they can unload, really. And I think some of the accounts we got back from some of the technicians were really enlightening and quite worrying as well. But the aim of the report really is to highlight this, to highlight the level of it, the importance of it, and how crucial it is that we as institutions and employers support our technicians to understand and recognise that not only is that likely to be a very real part of their role, but actually if it's helping to support students, there's nothing wrong with that. We just need to make sure they have the tools to be able to do it properly, to understand that they expect that might happen, and that they are supported in doing so, because it's not an easy thing to have to deal with if you've got a student with, potentially really troubling concerns, that a technician is involved in that. They need support as well. So we need to support them to understand that it's a very real part of university life at the moment, and that we as an institution have a duty to those technicians to support them and enable them to manage that pastoral role.
Just picking out that. I agree with that completely. Just picking out some of the stats from that report. We've got. You said that over 700 people completed that report. That survey. 50% of the technicians surveyed said that they had discussed a personal problem with the student in the last 3 years, and 80% said it wasn't a formal part of their role and that they'd had no training. Just picking up that on your point there, the need to support those technicians who were...
Quite surprised it's as low as 80%, frankly. I mean, it's a very real thing. So following that, we in our institute have asked all of our particularly core technicians to attend mental health first aid training. And actually, most of them have. Some of them haven't because of availability, but really want to. And I think what you get from the sense from the report is that technicians feel they haven't necessarily been told that will be a part of their role or had any training to do so, but they all really, really want to be in that position to support students. And if we make the training available and the support available to the technicians, they'll actually play a really crucial linchpin role.
So just for the listeners there, the report that we've just been talking about will be part of the show notes. And in that, there are some recommendations that have been targeted at institutions and the sector as a whole, as well as technicians themselves. So, I do encourage everybody to download that and have a read.
And more recently, some of your work's focused on enhancing the diversity within the technical community. Can you explain some of that and the impact that you hope it brings?
Yeah, no, I can take some credit for this one, because I was involved in this one. So this came about really initially as a result of a discussion at one of the Technician Commitment Signatory events. In the Institute of Integrated Biology, we're very proud to be Gold Athena Swan Award holders. And at the time we were waiting for the decision on that, we got discussing with somebody from the John Innes Centre down in Norwich, who was also eagerly awaiting outcome of their Gold Award application. And we both were successful in doing so, and as a result engaged in a conversation afterwards about actually that there might be some overlap here. When you look at the two, there's a lot of synergy between the aims of Athena Swan and the aims of Technician Commitment, which are really about providing opportunity for people who hitherto have been denied those opportunities for one reason or another. So we got about doing some work on that and comparing data. The beauty of being a Gold Award holder, it means necessarily that we actually have very good recruitment data on various aspects of equality and diversity. So we looked at those, compared those with national HESA data. And the aim of that work really was to look at where we stand and then sort of contrast and compare, and then look at the sector. And we took the opportunity to run workshops at 4 events. 2 of those were technician-focused events, one of which being the Technical Managers in Universities Conference, and 2 of them were Advanced AG events. And we spoke to people that are involved in Athena Swan planning, and we spoke to people that are involved in the Technician's Commitment and technical recruitment. And what we learned from that really was that there is a lot of overlap in the aims of those initiatives, but there's also a lot of division in that people didn't really know anything about the other initiative. And also with the technical managers, we found that a lot of them are engaged in that sort of work, but weren't really recognising the problems around equality and diversity that face the technical communities. And it's quite alarming really when you look at the figures around equality and diversity in the technical community. Now, the technical community isn't special as opposed to any other community. There are equality and diversity issues across all of HEI really. But it gave us the opportunity to highlight for a very large and diverse body of staff, there's actually a few issues there that really need addressing. I think we found that what we see in Liverpool and John Innes Centre and in Nottingham completely matched the overall picture we see at the national level, which is that across technicians, across the country, there's a majority of men. About 58% I think are men, which doesn't seem a huge majority, but it's hugely skewed by certain areas, such as physics and engineering, for instance. So in physics and engineering, 11% of the workforce across the whole country are female. We also found that the age of around 30% of technicians across the country are over 51 years old, which has concerns around sustainability and retention of skills. And in physics and engineering, I think that figure is about 45%. It's higher still. Alarmingly, only 10% or just up to 10% of the entire technical workforce across the country are identified as BAME. So there's huge concerns, I think, and I think they actually mirror a lot of the other groups within HEI and the sector as a whole.
And one aspect of that data that jumped out at me was that even in subject disciplines where the majority of the technicians are female, yes, it's the men who have taken on the leadership managerial roles as well, and there seemed to be an issue around that as well. Yeah,
so we found in the sort of health and life sciences sector, we see a much better representation of male to female ratios up to a certain grade level, and it's quite hard to compare grades across the sector because we all grade differently. There are some sort of rough boundaries that we can use, which we did, and exactly that, we found that even in the well represented areas, women are very underrepresented at the senior managerial levels. In numbers, of course, there are fewer of those posts, but it's a very obvious drop off after a certain grade and age point as well. From about 30 to 35 plus, we see a major drop off of women in those leadership roles. So the work we did really was to bring all that together, to present it primarily to the technical community, to actually say, look at what's in front of you. What can we do about this? So much like the mental health report, we set in some recommendations there, again aimed at the sector, aimed at organisations, but also aimed at technical management, to say that we have a role in this. I think it was quite telling, speaking to some of my peers at other universities, other technical managers, that some didn't really recognise that there might be concerns around equality and diversity in their areas, and some just didn't see it as a problem, or didn't really know how they can do anything about that. And I think that's really important, that we give people in those roles not only the insight that there are these things that we really need to address, but also they have a role in that. I mentioned earlier about underrepresented groups, and it's all very well having recommendations. These things will take, obviously, a long time to change. But one thing that has happened, and we've just been working on, that's gone live now, is a collaboration with the University of Nottingham on a project called STEM Change. So they put in a successful EPSRC bid, and Liverpool is among another sort of, I can't remember how many, but several institutions that are on there as partners. So the STEM Change Project was set up to identify initiatives to support people from underrepresented groups across STEM subjects, really. And a bit of an offshoot of that is the Changemaker programme. This was set up last year, piloted at University of Nottingham. The aim of this is to enable technicians from underrepresented groups to engage in fully funded placement programmes, either within their own institution or across the partner institutions, to learn new skills, to get out there and network, and actually just to show them there's a wider world there. And it's really aimed at particularly giving those people from those underrepresented groups an opportunity to learn a bit more about what it takes to get into a leadership role and to expand their horizons. The pilot ran last year with about 9 or 10 technicians from Nottingham taking up short-term placements, and is now rolled out officially for this year. And we as a partner institution will be welcoming placement technicians from other institutions, and hopefully sending some from here elsewhere to learn more skills, to develop themselves, and just to understand their place.
Obviously, I love that type of development because it's non-formal development. You're going out there and you'll learn not only about, I don't know, a different piece of equipment, but could be just about the culture of working in different environments. People will pick up an awful lot from having that type of exposure to different environments. So I'm really keen on that.
So I think it's really important as well that the underrepresented groups bit is really important about
this.
Yeah. Because what we're doing with that is saying to people who traditionally haven't necessarily seen that there's a place for them, showing that actually not only is there a place for you, but there are opportunities for you. There are opportunities to progress, and if you want them and you seek them and you understand what it is that you want to get out of it, there are opportunities for you, and we should actively be promoting that. I think hopefully it's really, really positive.
That's been really interesting, so thanks for all of that. We like to finish each podcast asking for the person we're talking to give us a couple of take-home tips just for us to reflect on in terms of our own personal practice. So is there anything that you can leave us with that we could think about?
Tips. Well, I think what I've learned, most from coming into this role in the University of Liverpool, is one of the most important things I've done in the couple of years I've been here is learning from peers from other institutions or other parts of the university. That networking, although it sounds like a cheesy training course thing, but it's so important because it really lets you understand where you fit in the scheme of things, but also really helps you to recognise that whatever frustrations we have in our roles and whatever things we think can be done better, most other people share. And actually you can learn a hell of a lot from just collaborating with peers from either within or outside of the institution. And that's one of the real obvious benefits I've seen from the technician commitment. Working with representatives from the other signatory institutions, there's so much appetite for collaboration and sort of joint progression, really. Everyone wants to do the right thing and move in the right direction and work together. There's no sense of competition. I think it's been so important to understand that actually we do have obstacles here in the University of Liverpool. We also have such great opportunity for progress and for positive change. And by seeing how other areas are doing it, how other people are addressing that, we can learn from that. We can add to that. We can say, well, actually, here's how we're doing it. Let's do it all together. And that networking is really important.
So do we have a network here that runs regularly for technicians?
We do have a technicians network. They have a Twitter handle and an email distribution list. I said earlier that technicians were quite good at maintaining status quo, and I think we can evidence that with networks as well. I think people want a network. Do they engage in it enough? I would say no. But there's a really big opportunity there for technicians to engage a lot more with each other and to understand where they fit in the grand scheme of things.
Brilliant. So we could put the links to all of that in the
please
show notes
do.
At the end.
I think the only other thing I would add as well, you did say a couple of tips, so I'm going to give you two.
Great.
I mentioned it briefly earlier. It was about career path and ownership of that. I think being proactive and understanding what you want from the next stage in your career, even if you don't know what that is or when that's coming, I think it's a really important thing to do, is just to understand, if I stay as I am, how does my career or my job look in 5 years? If that doesn't look great, what do I need to do? I think there are lots of opportunities out there through the academy, through initiatives such as STEM Change or even beyond. there are lots of opportunities for people to sort of address where they take their job or their career next. And I think just ownership of that is so important. You can't wait for someone to say, here's these things you can do, I think you should go and do that. People have got to, particularly those on fixed term contracts, we've got to own that.
Great. Well, thanks for coming in, Paul. It's been really good talking with you today.
That was brilliant. There was loads in there, and thanks to Paul for spending some time chatting with us. Just reflecting on what he said, what I really liked at the end was what he was talking about in terms of being proactive in terms of your career path, and that's something that I really want to think about. He was saying about actively looking for the next step in your career, looking for development opportunities, looking to be part of networks. So actually being really proactive and taking ownership in terms of where you want to go next and how you want to develop. I also really like what he was saying, and this is something that I've thought about in terms of my work previously, is that pastoral role of technicians. And I've seen this in action, where technicians can really get alongside the students in those kind of everyday interactions and support them in terms of their mental health. And I think that that's something that I want to think about, and think about how we can develop in terms of supporting technicians in that role.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. It's that they sit in an ideal position to provide that support. So yeah, it's really important. A couple of things from me. I mean, I am involved in the Technicians Commitment Action Plan. You know, I had a hand in writing that plan. And Paul's right. It really is an ambitious action plan. It does include a lot of important, impactful actions for technicians. And we got the voice of the technicians through that technical leaders forum, and their voices were heard, and their voices went into the action plan. And again, I think that's something else that's really important going forward, that the technicians' voices are heard, and they are included in the discussions taking place operationally and strategically across the university.
Well, there's lots in that conversation, and I hope that will help us to reflect on our personal practice. We'd love to hear back from you in terms of your thoughts about that conversation. So please do tweet us at LiveUni Academy, or you can tweet us individually as well at eLearnerMatt or at Alexandra_Owen. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections on our conversation with Paul. Also, if you'd like to take your thinking further about this, we've added some resources to the website specifically for this podcast. So you can access them at liverpool.ac.uk/the-academy/podcast.
And we're really grateful for those who have taken the time to either rate or review our show in your podcast provider's app. The reviews are coming in, and if you want to shout out, then please let us know. Or if you want to, like Alex has said, contact us on Twitter, and we will obviously mention you in our show. So if you have listened and enjoyed the podcast, please rate or even better review the show, as it really does help us get us noticed, and therefore more people will find us as a result. Bye for now.